Recently in Japan, simply wearing shorts as a man can be criticized for making other people uncomfortable. The shorts should be a perfectly practical choice during Japan's extremely hot summer. So why have they become such a controversial issue here in Japan? So in this video, we'll look at why Japanese men can still find it difficult to wear shorts, even in intense summer heat, and explore the unwritten rules surrounding clothing and personal grooming in Japan. In fact, as I researched this topic, I realized that the issue goes far beyond clothing. It extends to an unexpected part of the male body that Japanese men have kept hidden for decades.
いや別に OK ならばいいと思います。ちょっとラフすぎるかなと思います。
毎日ハーフパンツで着て出社されてるのかなと思われていたみたいで。
Is clothing in Japan really becoming more free, or are the rules simply becoming more complicated? Watch until the end and let me know how Japan compares with your country. So how have shorts traditionally been viewed in Japan? For a long time, shorts were not considered appropriate clothing for adult men in formal or professional settings in Japan. So in Japanese, shorts are sometimes called hanzubon, which literally means half-length trousers. For some people, the word brings to mind children's summer clothes or school gym uniforms. Shorts are also associated with sports, outdoor activities, beaches, or quick trips around the neighborhood. In other words, they have traditionally been viewed as clothing for casual and relaxed situations. So because of this, depending on their length, design, and where they were worn, shorts on an adult man can sometimes be seen as childish, overly casual, or even similar to clothes worn at home. In recent years, however, that boundary has started to change. In 2026, as part of a new Cool Biz initiative, the Tokyo Metropolitan Government began encouraging its employees to wear comfortable clothing, including shorts, depending on their duties and the situation.
最初はちょっと周りの目も気になるかなと思ったんですけれども、実際働いてみるとすごく快適で仕事の能率も上がっている気がします。
In other words, shorts, which were previously considered clothing for weekends and leisure activities, are gradually entering the workplace in Japan. So why has a practical summer outfit promoted by the Tokyo government being criticized in Japan for making other people uncomfortable? As men began wearing shorts in workplaces where their legs had traditionally been covered, attention shifted to something other than the clothing itself: male leg hair. In response to the Tokyo government's decision to encourage shorts at work, some people on social media said things like, "I don't want to see someone else's leg hair in the workplace," or "I don't want to look at middle-aged men's legs." A debate about whether shorts were appropriate for work gradually turned into a debate about male body visible beneath them. Of course, having leg hair is not unhygienic. Body hairs grows even on people who wash themselves every day. Whether someone has body hair and whether that person is actually clean are completely separate issues. However, in Japan, people often use the word seiketsukan when talking about someone's appearance. It's related to cleanness, but it does not simply mean that someone is physically clean. It's very tricky. It's vague and difficult concept to define, yet it's considered extremely important in Japanese society. A simple way to explain seiketsukan would be a well-groomed appearance that gives other people a sense of cleanness and reassurance. So because of this, even when someone is physically clean, visibly thick body hair may create that impression that they have not taken care of themselves or that they look untidy. What is being judged is not necessarily the person's hygiene, it's how the appearance is perceived by the people around them. This is practically noticeable in workplaces where people were previously given almost no opportunity to see men's legs. Something that might not attract any attention at the beach or during the weekend, can suddenly stand out when it appears in a place where suits and long trousers have always been the norm. Personally, when I haven't groomed my leg hair, I also tend to wear long trousers even during summer. And this is exactly what is happening in Japan's current debate about shorts. At this point, you may be wondering why leg hair in particularly has become such a problem. Men naturally grow hair on many different parts of their bodies. When they wear short sleeves or their arm hair is visible, beards grow directly on the face, so they can't even be hidden by clothing. However, not all types of body hair are judged in the same way. In Japan, grooming expectations depend on where the hair grows and the situation in which it becomes visible. The area that has traditionally been managed most strictly is facial hair. Of course, some Japanese men have beards. However, for a typical office worker, shaving every morning before going to work has long been treated as the normal thing to do. Older generations in particular can have very strict attitudes toward facial hair. Even today, some older people may see a man as untidy simply because he has a beard. And what is interesting is that a beard itself is not dirty. Even if it's properly washed, trimmed, and carefully shaped, it may still be considered inappropriate in certain workplaces or occupations in Japan. In other words, what matters in Japan is not only whether someone is actually clean, it's also whether their appearance matches the image of a man that is expected in that particular environment. Arm hair, on the other hand, has traditionally been judged less strictly than facial hair. It's a bit weird, but because it naturally becomes visible when men wear short-sleeved shirts in summer, many Japanese men do not remove it. However, men with particularly thick arm hair or those working in customer-facing jobs or where they interact closely with other people are increasingly choosing to trim or remove it. The same is true for armpit and chest hair. So in the past, removing these types of hair was not generally considered part of normal male grooming in Japan. Today, however, it's no longer unusual for men to groom their body hair before wearing sleeves, clothing, or going to the gym, swimming pool, or hot spring, where more of their body may be visible. In other words, grooming expectations for Japanese men are expanding from areas that are always visible, such as the face, to areas that become visible depending on their clothing, including the arms, legs, and armpits. The fact that leg hair, which had previously been hidden by long trousers, suddenly became controversial when men started wearing shorts can be understood as part of this, broader changes. As men gain greater freedom in what they wear and expose more of their bodies, parts of the body that were previously ignored are increasingly being judged according to the standard of seiketsukan. Why then have Japanese men recently started to paying attention not only to facial hair but also to arm hair, leg hair, and armpit hair? One major reason is that beauty and grooming for men are no longer considered as unusual as they once were. When I think back to my own student days, 10 or 15 years ago, almost no men around me were removing body hair or wearing makeup. At the time, a man wearing makeup would probably have received some, strange looks, I believe. Today, however, skincare products for men, including lotions, moistures, and sunscreen, are commonly sold in ordinary drugstores and of course convenience stores. And according to a 2025 survey of 1,280 Japanese men, roughly 60% say they regularly use skincare products. When asked which areas of beauty and grooming interested them, skincare ranked first at 26.2%, followed by hair removal at 15%. Men are also not starting beauty routines simply to become more attractive to women. In another survey, the most common reason men gave for starting to use basic skincare product was to improve dry skin or other skin problems at about 31%. The second most common answer was that skincare was part of their efforts to improve themselves at roughly 24%. In other words, male beauty and grooming in Japan are shifting from like something practiced only by a small group of high, appearance conscious men to an ordinary part of taking care of oneself. But there is another interesting point. The attitudes toward male body hair are not the same across every generation, of course. In the 2026 survey of 4,000 Japanese men and women, roughly 32% of men said they were concerned about their own unwanted body hair. Among men in their 20s, however, the figure increased to about 53%. This suggests that younger generations of men are more likely to view body hair as part of their overall grooming. In a separate survey of 300 men, 43% of men in their 20s and 48% of men in their 30s said they removed or groomed their own body hair. By contrast, 74% of men in their 40s said they took no action at all, and more than half of men aged 50 and above also said they did nothing about their body hair. Of course, this was like a relatively small survey, so it cannot represent every Japanese man. However, it doesn't suggest a significant difference in attitudes, like toward body hair grooming, between men in their 20s and 30s and those aged 40 and above. For young Japanese men, the idea that they should also groom their leg hair visible beneath their shorts is gradually becoming more common. When today's men in their 40s and 50s were younger, removing hair from the legs or arms was not considered a normal part of the male grooming. For many men, the only hair they were expected to manage every day was their facial hair. As a result, even when men from different generations wear the same shorts, they may think about them very differently. Younger men may consider the visible body hair as part of the outfit, while older men may see no reason to remove naturally growing leg hair. The fact that people in this debate often refer specifically to middle-aged men's leg hair rather than simply men's leg hair may reflect this, generational difference in grooming standards. But does this difference in attitudes toward body hair also influence how each generation views shorts themselves? According to a 2026 survey, 60% of men in their 30s supported wearing shorts in the workplace. Among men in their 50s, however, 64% were opposed to it. In other words, the generations are divided not only over body hair, but also over whether shorts should be worn at work in the first place. While younger generations tend to be more, accepting of wearing shorts in professional settings, older generations, on the other hand, are more likely to maintain traditional attitudes toward both workplace clothing and men removing their body hair. As grooming standards for Japanese men continue to change, the different idea of what is normal for each generation are beginning to collide. And this is just like my personal opinion, but the people complain leg hairs mostly might be women, but if we talk about it, it would be very long. So yeah, clothing may be becoming more free than it was in the past, but at the same time, new rules are being created for the parts of the body that clothing reveals. So is it normal for men to wear shorts at work in your country? And when you see a man who has not removed his leg or arm hair, do you find it uncomfortable? I believe opinion is really divided by especially you are a man or women, so let me know in the comments below. And Japan has many other unwritten rules surrounding clothing and personal appearance, so to learn more about some of the strange rules of Japanese society, be sure to watch this video next. Alright, so thanks so much for watching. See you in the next video.